Hello, everybody out there in radio or internet land. Y'all are tuned in to Media Ciphers. We're joined now by a very special guest, Tom Greig. He's a union rep with the Michigan Education Association. He is here to talk to us about a recent story going on with the KCTEA, which is the Kalamazoo Career Technical Education Association. Now, if you keep your ear and your eye on local news, you may have heard there was a recent rally to try to highlight the fact that the KRESA is not actively bargaining with educators. We're going to deep dive into that. Tom, thank you for joining the program. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, and it's great to be here.
All right, wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and start with the basics. Could you just tell our listeners a bit about the KCTEA and who it represents?
Absolutely. The KCTEA, as you mentioned, is a union formed for the instructors of the KRESA Career Connect campus. It's a new center for career readiness for high school students from the 9 homeschool districts in Kalamazoo County. And these 26 instructors and 5 ancillary staff and 3 counselors. Many of them came from homeschool districts and moved over to KRESA, so they came from a union contract and they wanted to end up with a union contract with similar protections. Many of the instructors, though, come straight out of industry. And so, as a career educator, as long as you have 4,000 hours of documented experience in your industry and some other things, you can then become an instructor as well. So it's a mix of, school employees and industry employees.
All right, and I'm going to kind of deep dive a little bit more into some of the nuts and bolts questions here. So I wanted to ask, it was news to me that the KRESA educators were not under a contract. Apparently, they are not. And the KCTEA is organizing for its first contract. And I've got some follow-up questions to this, of course, but could you maybe just give us a broader overview? What has been the response from the KRESA administration to the KCTA?
So yeah,
KCTE.
so KRESA has been around for a long time. Every county in Michigan has a RESA or an ISD, depending on how they want to define themselves. And so there's 56 counties in Michigan, and so there's 56 RESAs or ISDs. And so Kalamazoo RESA has about 750 employees, and they are the only school district in the state of Michigan with more than 10 total employees without a union. And so they are certainly the exception, not the rule. And so, you know, we began forming the union in the fall of 2023. We had the representation election, which is controlled by the state of Michigan and what's called the Michigan Employment Relation Commission, or if you hear me use the term MERC, that's what I mean. So MERC adjudicates the representation election. So we had the election, and Michigan Education Association prevailed, and we represent all the employees that are instructors or ancillary staff of the CTE program through KRESA. So right away, KRESA, right out of the gates, and just the initial discussions with MERC before the representation election, threw up as many barriers as they possibly could to form this. So they didn't like the initial language, so we redesigned the language. When we came back with new language, they wanted old stuff added back, and they kept at every step they're trying to pull us into some sort of protracted legal battle, so that that would stop the union until that was handled through the court systems. We acquiesced throughout the whole process in order to get this going, so that we didn't want to fight over language and stuff in the beginning. We just wanted to form the union and start bargaining the contract. So we were certified in 2024 in April and started bargaining at that point. Um, 1 year later, the KRESA manufactured another representation election saying that we didn't represent the majority of its employees. We went through that process for a second time, and we prevailed as the union of choice for these employees. And we've sat at the bargaining table for over 24 months, and really haven't gotten anywhere. We've tried all sorts of different bargaining proposals, uh, most of which were tied to their employee handbook. So we weren't trying to change things dramatically. But one of the things that we wanted was due process and contract enforcement. And so what that means is that, if there's an alleged violation of the contract, that eventually it would go to a neutral third party arbiter to make that decision. What they want is to have the superintendent be the final say. And so that's a pretty big sticking point because a contract's only as good as its enforceability.
No,
And
yeah,
so that's
absolutely. And before we dive any deeper, I know you recent. So as I mentioned, you recently there was a rally outside the Career Connect campus. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about how that went? Getting your message out there and kind of support you had.
Yeah, so first off, we don't hold these kind of rallies until it becomes apparent that it's really one of the last things that we have to try to have the district treat us seriously. And so certainly this was not our first choice to hold a rally of this type. And so this was orientation for new students for next school year, along with their parents. And so, I talked to a lot of the local unions, and they sent each union sent a few representatives. We also had representatives from MNA, Michigan Nursing Association. We had representatives that came from the trades that this building services in the community. So, for example, like the Millwright Carpenters Union um, uh, were supportive of this rally as well. And so it was really a coalition. And so we had about 50 people there, which didn't seem like a huge crowd in terms of our entire membership for the county, but it was significant and positive in the fact that it represented many, many different aspects of unions around Kalamazoo County. And so we rallied last week, Thursday, May 14th, basically between 5 and 7 p.m. when parents were coming and going from this event and just trying to get out more community awareness of what's going on and try to move towards what I would say accountability for KRESA. So for decades and decades, they have been able to run KRESA with little to no accountability. And what I mean by that is that they they don't really answer to anybody in the public. So their board, which consists of 5 individuals, are appointed, and so there's no accountability to an electorate. So they hold meetings that are very short, no discussion. They spend millions upon millions of dollars in just a matter of seconds without any discussion. I've been going to their school board meetings for the most part for the last 2 years, and in that time, we've had maybe one or two community members show up total, and so they're pretty much able to do all of their business, make all of their decisions in the shadows. And I think one of the things that scares them is that having a union kind of shines a light on their practices. And so they're going to have to be financially accountable as well as, accountable to their employees.
Well, it's again, it's never good when workers are put in that position, but it does warm my heart to hear that y'all had that kind of solidarity out there. And yeah, I want to kind of move back, kind of dig a little bit deeper into KRESA's position here. And this is something we see a lot, especially with new unions that are forming, where it seems like KRESA is behaving as though your union does not exist. And I think in one of your documents, they said they spent almost $200,000 trying to arbitrate it away. I wanted to ask you why you think this is their position, and especially in light of some of the scrutiny and solidarity you've been having lately. Do you think are you optimistic that they're going to be forced to recognize the union?
I mean, that is a great question. So, um, from the start, they haven't taken this union serious, and part of their strategy is that if they allow just a, even just a decent first contract, it doesn't have to be anything ground shattering. Just basically documenting the current conditions so that they're now held accountable for those conditions. If we get that for these 31 employees, then I believe it will be a domino effect because I've talked to many other employees throughout the district. Like I said, there's probably 650 union eligible staff at KRESA. And many of them came from school districts in which they had a union. And so many are surprised when they get to KRESA to realize that there isn't a union. And certainly, I think there's a lot of support across the district for unionizing. And I think basically KRESA looks at this, the board looks at this and says if this union's allowed to survive and flourish, then it'll be only a matter of time before the rest of our district raises their hand and says, "Hey, wait a minute, I want a contract. I want representation. I want a fair first contract." And so that's why I believe that they've spent this enormous amount of money. Like you mentioned, it's $200,000 and climbing. Um, for example, in terms of their willingness to frustrate us, their new attorney, which is their fourth attorney that they've used at the table from the Troon law firm, uh, sent no less than 12 emails and 3 phone calls to us over the last week trying to um, define information request around trying to quote new insurances, in which they finally gave us the little piece of information we needed to provide the quote, but it took 3 weeks and probably, 20 or 30 billable hours by their attorney, which in the end, they knew that they were going to have to provide this information. But again, they're not worried about the cost of doing this more than they're trying to frustrate my people there into maybe giving up and moving on.
And just as a reminder, folks, that 200K did not come out of thin air. That's our money, the community's money.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. So in your note, as you've noted in the materials, they're engaging in five legally recognized unfair labor practices. And I was wondering if you could explain to our listeners, what those are and how that affects the rank and file over at the KCTA TEA. Sorry.
Yeah, so the right to unionize and bargain collectively in Michigan came about in 1965 in what's called the Public Employee Relations Act, or PARA. And it's been the law of the land for unions since then. And so within that law defines each party, so not only the union, but the employer's duty to follow the law and bargain in good faith. So these five unfair labor practices are charged. We filed charges with Merck um, based on specific actions by KRESA. So they span from individual acts to very broad acts. So an individual act that we filed on was that they actually tried to coerce voting by offering a $500 bonus for people in the union who proved that they voted in any ratification elections. And so this, elections run through the union are a union internal matter. And who gets to vote and who doesn't get to vote, that's all defined by the union. And by offering this, it's kind of trying to manipulate that, which in fact, that one actually caught the attention of the Michigan Elections Commission. And currently, they've opened up an investigation on that same charge, and that the Michigan State Police is currently conducting.
Not to interrupt, that's just that is very brazen. I've heard we've heard a lot in our time on the show, but yeah, that's that I wow.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 25 plus years and I've never seen anything like this. So, we're not talking about ticky-tacky type offenses here. We're talking about very blatant offense. So, the second offense was that they were withholding 2 years worth of raises for all the union members. And they said, we can't give any raises, even though we didn't disagree about what those raises should be. We'd already accepted what those raises should be for 2 years. They withheld it, saying that we have to accept the rest of their contract in order to get those raises. Well, we found out last October, 2 years into bargaining, little over 2 years into bargaining, that they had actually been paying raises to five of our union members under the table, like without our knowledge. And so that's a major violation because now they're playing favorites on who they think should get a raise and based on whatever metric they use for that. And so that's also something that I think is extremely brazen. Like I've never had, districts who have worked with unions before would never even contemplate that. That wouldn't even come into their mind that they could try to pay some people and not others in a union contract. That's one of the things about a union contract is that, you can't play favorites. Everybody gets the terms of the contract. So, in terms of that, that's the second charge. Third and fourth charge have to do with information. And so uh, we we under para have a right for information, and certainly the public interest, since this is all public dollars, tax dollars being spent, there's an interest there as well. And so we had asked for the legal fees, probably 8 months ago, and they refused to give us how much they were spending on their attorneys. Now, obviously, the content of the discussion with their attorney is privileged, but not the amount that the taxpayers are basically funding those attorneys. That's public knowledge, and they should share that. And they have refused to all along give that. In fact, we only learned of the total amount because WWMT News Channel 3 actually submitted a FOIA request and paid, I think, close to $400 for the right to know how much they spent on legal fees. And so that's the only way we actually know kind of how much they've spent. The fourth charge was that they unilaterally, meaning they didn't discuss it with us, they changed the health care insurance, which is again another violation of the law. You cannot change things while you're bargaining unless you actually bargain them. And so they continue to change things like dental, vision, health care, things like that without bargaining them, which is a big no-no under para. And then lastly is the biggest one, is we filed a charge for bargaining in bad faith. And basically meaning that we don't feel like they've come to the bargaining table with serious proposals, that they've engaged in stall tactics at every point along the way, and that we feel like that they have not bargained in good faith. So all total, these five charges, because it's over 2+ years, it's almost 900 pages of discovery in this court case. And so it's a massive lawsuit that we're pursuing. And we've had the first day of court was February 19th. And we filed these charges August of 2025. So to give you an idea of how they've been able to stall. First court date was February 2026. Second court date is next week, May 27th. We're hoping to get it wrapped up then, so that we can move to getting a decision, which we feel confident that we'll get a decision on this.
Wow, thank you. That was very informative and eye-opening. Um, I wanted to pivot a little bit to this is more a question about kind of working conditions and maybe some of the things that the union would seek to address after it's recognized. But I noticed that KRESA has a great deal of educator turnover. And I was curious if you could maybe talk a little bit about what kind of unique pressures and conditions you think have led to that, and how KCTEA would maybe help to curb some of those conditions or address them.
Absolutely. So, as you and your listeners probably know, teaching is a pretty tough profession. So, we're not going to sit here and say that turnover across the profession is low comparatively, but in the other districts that we represent, we're looking at like a 5% maybe 10% turnover at best, or at worst, I should say. Whereas, we've documented extremely high turnover just within the small unit since its inception. So we're well over 40%, which means, almost half of the teachers that started this thing have left, which we conducted a survey, an anonymous survey, and we got 75% response rate and six additional employees, which that's six of 26 instructors. So that's a pretty significant number. Said in that survey that they don't plan on coming back next year. So the turnover rate's only going to get even higher. In fact, today, my office, I yielded some questions from members of this unit on how they, their duty and what they needed to do to resign at the end of the year. And so I would rather not be talking about how to resign, but I would rather be talking about how we can partner with KRESA. The Michigan Education Association is one of the oldest, if not the oldest union of educators, and almost oldest union period. We were founded in 1852. So 100, we've been doing this for 174 years. And we believe in education. We believe in that our members' working conditions are our students' learning conditions. And so, as part of that partnership, we can offer professional development, all free. We offer everything we do free. So, I can come in, bring in experts on behavioral management, on curriculum, classroom management, special ed, following IEPs, 504s. So, we have a lot of experts that we have access to, and all of those experts come free. Certainly the district can bring in experts from the private sector, but they charge money. And again, they may or may not be part of an organization that's been around for a while and really understands these issues. So that's where I'd like to get to. I'd like to get to how do we help make this the best programs in the state. But we just can't get there. In fact, we've offered to sit down, and the instructors offered to sit down with administrators to give them feedback on what's going good and what's not going good, and maybe some ideas. And some of our instructors have 25 plus years in the classroom. And KRESA's response is, sure, but we can't offer any guarantees that what they say in those meetings that they won't be disciplined or terminated for. And so we have examples where one of our union leaders met with a principal in March and talked about behavioral management issues and offered some suggestions. And the result of that was that they disciplined our union leader for saying that, which would in fact be another unfair labor practice should we decide to file it. And so we've offered like a simple agreement that says, hey, they could participate in this meeting without any retribution, and they've said they're not interested in that they want to retain the right to be able to discipline people if they don't like what the feedback is.
Man, I guess all the more reason to have a union. Speaking of which, this is going to be kind of our last big question here, but something kind of goes to the heart of our program. We're a working class news program for working class people, and the KCTA. So it's a relatively new union. Many of our listeners are union members or they actively think about how to organize their workplaces. So I was wondering if you could maybe walk us through your experience helping to organize this union from the ground up. Like what does it kind of take to get something with legs and get to the point where you are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So first, I would like to make a statement about who the union is. So the union consists of the employees. So it is their union. We're here to help facilitate that. So a lot of people think of like us as the union, but we're really like union helpers. And so, the local creates their own governance. They create their own policies, how they want to run their union, and we're just here to support that. So that being said, if there are people out there that are in a union and want to get more active, then your union should be holding monthly board meetings, and so you just need to find out when those are, and any member can attend those for any union, and then. Trust me, if you say, "Hey, I want to help," you will get tasked. Union leadership is always looking for more people to help out. And so that's a good way to, if you don't like what your union's doing, that's also a good way to affect your union as well. Now, if you work for someone that doesn't have a union, there's two different types of unions. So there's public sector and there's private sector. So public sector would be hospitals, schools, fire, police, any employer that's paid through public dollars, tax dollars, that's public. So that process is what we follow. And so that would be essentially getting 35% of your current employee group to sign what's called representation cards. And these are cards that are available through Merck, or through if you're going to pick a sponsor, so like UAW, or there's a ton of different unions that you could have sponsor you, and they can help you with this process as well. And so once you get 35% of the people saying, "Hey, I'm interested in a union, I'd like to have a union vote," then you could file a petition with the state of Michigan, which would then set a representation election. And by the way, this is all anonymous, so your employer would not know who signed these cards, nor would they know how you voted in the representation election. That's held by the state of Michigan, and it's very, very, very confidential, obviously, because they don't want any retribution getting out, for knowledge getting out who is supporting the union. So once you have that, then you essentially would have a vote, and it would be 50% of the employees plus one, so 51%, and you have a union, and then you could start bargaining the first contract. The process is fairly similar with a private employer, only instead of the state of Michigan and Merck, you deal with the National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB, and essentially go through the process, which is almost identical through them. I would like to note here, I know we don't necessarily talk about politics a lot of times when we're doing this, but the NLRB was gutted under the current federal administration. So we're not really sure what that means for to the future of private sector unions. But certainly Merck through Michigan is strong as ever under the current leadership. So.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Tom. And we're about ready to wrap up. And I want to thank you so much for spending your time and really this is very informative, letting the community know what's going on in this contract struggle. I wanted to know what can Kalamazoo residents do to help the KCTEA in their struggle for a contract with KRESA?
Absolutely. So I would think the first thing that they can do is attend a KRESA board meeting. They're held every third Tuesday of the month at their what they call their service center on Millam, which is between Lovers Lane and Portage Road. at 5:30. So third Tuesday of the month, 5:30. Come, you can come listen. There's a portion where the public can speak for 3 minutes. You can just get up and say your support, but you certainly don't have to speak if you don't want to. That would be the first step. So every third Tuesday of the month, come attend. It's actually 5/19, so Tuesday evening at 5:30 this week. Also, we are putting together some town halls in different areas of the county that represent those 9 homeschool districts. I'm talking with parents down in Schoolcraft right now. We're putting a town hall together for people to come ask questions because this is having a real impact on student education. There's substitutes in the classroom. There's not enough money for materials. There's missing, they have each classroom is supposed to have a parapro called a technical assistant. And right now, I would say probably there's six to eight that are not in the classrooms, and probably way more that are going to be quitting here at the end of the year. So all of that affects education. All those are interests of the public, especially if you're a parent out there and you are concerned about your child's education. They may be attending or plan to attend the CCC through KRESA, the Career Tech Campus. Get involved, reach out, come to board meetings and speak up and get involved. So.
All right. Well, Tom, once again, thank you so much for your time. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, or maybe that I didn't get to in our conversation before we wrap up?
No, I think certainly having a couple of years of what's going on, I think that's where the town halls will be much more useful in terms of people hearing exactly what's happening. I can tell a lot of stories about what's going on. I can spend all afternoon telling you what's wrong with KRESA right now. But I think coming to these town halls, I think we could share these stories and perspective on why we feel like unionizing is so important for these employees and for the students of Kalamazoo County.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom. You have an excellent day, and solidarity to you and for the educators with the KCTEA.
I appreciate it, Andy. Thank you.